Orale! Bienvenidos and welcome to the Familia FFB podcast. This is your host, Jorge Martin. Familia, NFL Draft. It's NFL Draft time. We're locked in, Familia. We are locked in and we are live on YouTube. Kind of pre-recorded, but I'm doing live stream on here. So let's make sure you throw your comments in there. I will be in the chat. So you just throw those comments, questions, anything, whatever you want, and I'll answer them for you. And as we've always been, we are a proud member of the Fantasy Points Media Group. Make sure you get your 2023 subscription. You get some incredible minds: John Hanson, Joe Dolan, Graham Barfield, Scott Barrett, Wes Huber, Tom Brawley, so many greats. You're going to see some of my content in there too. Make sure you get your 2023 subscription. It's going to take you all the way to the Super Bowl. And when we talk about Super Familia, I feel incredibly super that I'm going 3 for 3. You guys know I love my baseball analogies. 3 for 3 when it gets to getting members of the Devi Royale, formerly known as the Devi Royale, but they're now the Football Guys College Football Show. My Familia, we're dropping some knowledge on this. I mean, I wanted to get some amigos on the invitados, but especially people who really know and have been studying the college football game and are getting us ready for draft time. So our invitado today, he is straight out of Ohio and is going to bring it tonight, just for crucial class of fantasy football players for fantasy football 2023. You guys know who we're talking about. There are two things that he and I have in common: dogs and haircut. So, you know, we match up each other on each, but so we know he's muy buena gente. So I think he's going to have us screaming like the Elton John song with a little bit of change. He shall be Bijan. Let's welcome in Christian Williams. Christian, mi amigo, welcome.
Thank you. That was, I think you set the bar too high. So I've really got to bring it, but I'm excited. This rookie class is really fun to talk about, and I'm very excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
How long have you just been? I mean, people have been talking in anticipation about this running back class for a while. When did you kind of see it coming?
A couple years ago. Oftentimes in college football, there will be some like true freshman one-hit wonders. And so as we got into early parts of most of these guys' sophomore years, or maybe even just a little bit later when, some guys came back and didn't enter last year's class, you really started to see it start to take shape. And ultimately, it's looking like one of the better running back classes that I've ever evaluated. I've only been putting grades on people for 5 or 6 years now, but it's up there with like the 2017 class, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to evaluate them.
And it really is. And one of the things that I looked at in last year's class, now, if you don't count Travis Etienne, who essentially could be considered a rookie because he missed his rookie season, but without him, there were about 8 running backs who were fantasy viable at any point, who were at the very least like a deep flex play, guys like James Cook, those kind of guys. But I mean, some good players who really stepped up. Breece Hall, unfortunately, got hurt. Not Javonte Williams. I'm sorry. Damian Pierce was one guy who really showed out last year. Ken Walker was a 1,000-yard rusher, and some guys who, in the back of the class, Isaiah Pacheco on this one. So, we've got guys who did that last year, but could we be seeing? I mean, obviously, landing spot's going to have a lot to do with it, and who's currently on there. But beyond this, beyond the top guy, who people are talking about him with so many adjectives that you wouldn't believe, but how could you see this class impacting NFL teams and fantasy rosters in 2023?
It's really interesting because while this class is so deep, and this is the class that resets the dynasty running back landscape, when you go through and start to make dynasty rankings, if you're a ranker, it's very, very difficult once you get towards the bottom half of even the top 12, because we're starting to get those guys that have hit age cliffs. That being said, this is a very interesting free agent class too, and I think we may see a few more committees pop up. A lot of these newer head coaches like to implement committees as well. That said, this class is very, very, very special, and I do believe that more than 8 rookies will have some type of impact, even if it's just for a few week stretches. like there are probably going to be 3 or 4 day 3 guys, in my opinion, that end up on fantasy rosters in redraft formats that can, get you a flex play. So yeah, I mean, which ones it'll end up being, I'm pretty past like 6 or 7. I think I can take some guesses, but there are so many good players in this class that, like you said, the landing spots are going to matter. But yeah, there's definitely going to be some fantasy impact from this group.
Yeah, I talked about Isaiah Pacheco. Tyler Algier was another guy who was, picked late in some and helped in the back half, actually helped people during the fantasy playoffs. So I think this class, what we talked about, I remember talking about this last year in drafting rookie wide receivers. I kept telling people, unless you have to, don't drop them because they're going to help you in the second half. I'm feeling optimistic that this could be the same, the same with this class. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, I think so. And really a lot of these guys have a skill set that lends itself to being fantasy viable, right? We'll talk through all these guys, but it's definitely a class that is strong in terms of pass catchers. There's guys that aren't even within close to our top 10 in the Football Guys rookie guide, which we'll, I'm sure, touch on a little bit later, but guys that I think can actually be fantasy relevant from the jump because they're so pro ready and they're so able and willing to catch passes. And those are guys that NFL teams are looking for. And so while maybe it might be an injury situation early in the year, or maybe it's, a few weeks into the season, a team needs to switch it up, I do think that a lot of these guys are going to have staying power on fantasy rosters because I do think that a lot of them will, if they're not immediate impact, they're going to be really, really close.
Oh man. Well, let's jump into it. Let's jump into it because I think people have been excited about this one guy, and I threw out the Elton John. Please, I hope nobody jumped off of the live stream on there. By the way, if you're on YouTube, make sure to give us a like and subscribe, por favor. Big help. Bijan Robinson. I mean, people are talking about him in the same sense that they talked about Saquon Barkley. That I've even better version of Josh Jacobs, who was a 2,000-yard player last year. Everything about him screams special. What have been the traits that you are looking at that is really going to translate to the NFL game, especially if he's a guy who could get 300 touches, catches, including catches?
Yeah. Man, it's tough not to just start gushing about literally everything a good running back can do, because Bijan does everything very, very well. Coming into last year, I think the one knock was, well, he doesn't have long speed. And then he showed a lot of breakaway speed, and I think he's going to run just fine for a 220-pound back. And so now when you're looking at his profile, he's got the ability to create yards, and he does it in a variety of ways because he's so elusive, but he runs with power. There are times that you would wish he would run with a little more power, but it doesn't end up mattering because he is so elusive. Lateral agility is there for him. Burst is there for him. And then the pass catching aspect of it is really remarkable. You can line Bijan up in the slot and he runs routes like he's a wide receiver. And he's not just, catching dump offs or anything like that. This kid is a weapon. And that is why he is very much so separate. He's in his own tier. There are a lot of really good running backs in the class. We already talked about that, but Bijan still is in his own tier. The Saquon Barkley comparisons, that makes sense to me. I mean, Bijan's the closest thing we've seen to Saquon. I don't think he's quite as special of an athlete, but I also think he's more nuanced and understands the game a little bit better. And his work between the tackles is a little bit better than Saquon's was even coming out. And so you're looking at a guy that can be a 3-down workhorse and an immediate, he should be in dynasty formats considered at least a top 3 running back before the draft, before we know his landing spot.
Oh man, pretty comfortable taking him as the 101 in dynasty. Are you?
Yeah, he's my one. And part of that is, he's going to be a young kid he's getting drafted in the first round, I think. And so you're getting at least 5 years from him, which is that matters nowadays, especially when most of these guys are getting 4-year deals. And then his second contract, he'll still be young. So yeah, he's the one for sure.
Could he be that salve or that well, I don't even know what to call it for Eagles fans if they lose Miles Sanders, and they're sitting there. They've got a high draft pick this year that they got in. Would that be just an extraordinary landing spot?
It would. To think of a backfield with Jalen Hurts and Bijan Robinson is terrifying, and a lot of people point to Howie Roseman doesn't really draft running backs, and he doesn't value that position. But this Eagles team is legitimately one piece like this away from being a dynasty. They're going to have to pay Jalen Hurts. They don't really have the cap to bring back Miles Sanders if that's the case. And so why not invest in easily the best running back prospect we've seen since at least 2018? And just that takes your offense to another level.
Yeah, he talking about another level. He made a play that I was watching some tape on him, and he made a play where it was on. He ran a route that probably about 20 yards out. It was against Alabama. Turns around, does a 180 catch. You know which one I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, sure do. Yep.
Catches it, gets his feet, turns around, just does not break stride, hardly loses any speed, and he takes it another extra 10 yards. That's something you don't teach. That's like, alien type of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And, it keeps coming back to Saquon. Saquon was a good pass catcher too, but I don't even think he had the ability to run routes and get downfield quite like Bijan can. You legitimately, like, if a team that had a running back entrenched drafted Bijan and said, well, we have to figure out a way to get him on the field, he could be your slot receiver, I think, at the next level. I think he's got that ability, and you don't see that with running backs, especially nowadays.
Oh man. Well, we know he's going early. We know he's going very, very early in dynasty drafts, and hopefully he's going early in the NFL draft. I mean, I think we're definitely expecting him to be a day one pick, maybe the only day one pick. But hey, you know what? It's exciting anytime we get those guys on the first day after we have so much anticipation. Here we are 2 months out, and we're already talking about it like it's going to happen tomorrow. But you're talking about pass catching, Jahmyr Gibbs. Some evaluators have considered him the best pass catcher in the game. I mean, he seems to have true home run speed, and it has had some great moments. Had an incredible game against Arkansas with over 200 yards. He's smaller, 5'11", 200, but what makes him you talked about the rookie guide, by the way. I'll let you plug it again at the end, but Familia, if you haven't gotten the Football Guys rookie guide, 2023 rookie guide, you need to get it. We're going in the order of the running backs in there. You're going to get more in depth. This is a good appetizer, un apetito, as we like to say in Espanol. So go get it. So Jahmyr Gibbs, what did you see about him that gets him so high on this guide?
Yeah, so Gibbs is interesting to me because before he transferred to Alabama, I think a lot of the concern was his work between the tackles and that home run speed. We didn't get to see it a whole lot with Georgia Tech, mostly because Georgia Tech is not a good football team. But when you put him into an Alabama offense and he does get a few more holes and he is able to work out in space and he's around a lot of other really good athletes, you could see what he can do. And his home run speed is definitely there. He checked that box for me this year. I think the surprising thing when you watch Jahmyr Gibbs is how refined he is between the tackles. You see that size and you think that's a guy that can run an outside zone scheme, and pretty much that's it. You want him out in space. You want him catching passes. He can do all those things. But when you put him between the tackles, he's got really, really good vision. He manipulates defenders well, especially that second level. He's able to manipulate linebackers and then create more holes for himself. And he gets chunk runs. He's got good burst, good contact balance. I think he's a flexible, good athlete. What we really need for Jahmyr Gibbs, though, for him to be successful, is a team that wants to use him as a pass catcher, because that is where he does the most damage. Honestly, I don't think he runs routes quite as well as Bijan Robinson, but I think that his hands are up there with Bijan's, and I think that he is just as dynamic after the catch in terms of getting upfield, making sure he doesn't break stride, things like that. So he is definitely a 3-down type of back. I know some people will see that size and say third down back only. That's not the case with Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think there's a chance that he's not the second running back drafted. I think that there are some guys that will be drafted ahead of him, but I think he falls on day 2, and everyone's pretty happy with that.
Yeah, you're right on wanting to see him. I mean, I'd love to see him like have an Austin Eckler type of role, that kind of thing. The teams are definitely seem to be more open to that, but there's got to be that commitment. And gosh, I mean, there are probably at least a half dozen teams that we could see doing that. And plus, I think it helps those guys last a little bit longer in the NFL. So fingers crossed. Like I know you guys love to say it's all in landing spot, but.
Yeah, for sure. He's a guy that can catch 80 plus passes any season, though. A lot of people like to comp him to Alvin Kamara, but our comp is actually Dalvin Cook, except he does have really good hands. Dalvin Cook doesn't have bad hands by any means, but just the style of player that he is, he looks a lot like Dalvin Cook, who, if people recall, Dalvin Cook was pretty small when he was coming out of college too. So it's an interesting consideration that he could handle a workload as big as Dalvin's has been.
Yeah, and you think about it. You mentioned that, and I could see that in the runs. Yeah, he's definitely got that burst, that same type of burst that Dalvin Cook has. So love that. Maybe he doesn't have the dreads like Dalvin. So
yeah, that's true. That is true.
those I don't know if those make him look faster or what. So
yeah, I don't know. I think too. It's really funny because Alvin Kamara and Gibbs have the same, like, they wear the arm tape. And they also have the shorter dreads. And so I think people just look at Gibbs and they're like, wow, he looks like Alvin Kamara out there, so he must play like him. But they're a different style of runner. I think that is a comp you're going to see quite a bit, though, here in the next couple of months.
Probably. And their size is a little bit is similar. Kamara is closer to 200 pounds. So
yeah,
at least he was when he came out of Tennessee. All right. Well, we're staying in the South. Zach Evans from Ole Miss, transfer, 5'11", 215, a little bit bigger guy. He's a guy who bigger and stronger. I saw the decent change of direction. What are the things that you like about him?
So Evans is a unique study too, because he's gone to his background matters a lot more than some of these other guys that we've already talked about. He had a weird recruitment where he committed to Georgia. He was the #1 recruit in the nation over Bijan Robinson. They were in the same class. Gibbs was too, actually. He was a little lower, but that whole situation ended up with him at TCU. And then he split time at TCU, transferred to Ole Miss, where he also split time again with Quinshon Judkins, who's really good. I don't think it should be a knock on Zach Evans that he split time. But from an evaluation standpoint, he's probably the best outside zone runner in this class, including Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. In terms of the burst, the athleticism, he is dripping with athleticism. He might not always show it on tape, and he's such a fluid athlete that you don't necessarily look at him and say, oh, he's a good athlete, because he makes it look so natural. But I think from a runner standpoint, from a pure running standpoint, he's up there with the best of them in this class. He does have really good change of direction. He is unique in that he can bend in certain ways, and that allows him to consistently break tackles and consistently fall forward and gain extra yards. He will have to answer for some of that stuff that we talked about, though. And so with Evans, I get a little worried that he might start to fall in the draft, and then we're looking at maybe a 4th or 5th round pick. And if that happens, I think he's such a good talent, such a talented player, that I would still be willing to take a shot on him. But then his price in almost every format, everyone kind of is aware of the name. And I think that will carry over. Debbie guys have been pushing Zach Evans, including me. I love this kid's game, but I did knock him a bit for some of that stuff that we talked about. But overall, his pass catching does need to get a lot better. His pass blocking does need to get a lot better. I think when he does catch the ball, he is incredibly dynamic after the catch. That burst gets turned on instantly. Good player, just worried about the off-field stuff, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, when a guy's been multiple places, that definitely you'd like to think that guys kind of fix that kind of stuff and realize that they've got the opportunity. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm thinking good thoughts for him.
With Evans too, I think his end goal was always the NFL. And
Mhm.
so now that he's there, I don't think that there are actual character concerns. I think it's simply uh, some of the play stuff. You know, he couldn't pass block, and so he couldn't be down on the field all 3 downs. So he lost some time, and I think that happened at TCU as well. And maybe he's not the most coachable in that respect, but I think he's been so focused on getting to the NFL that this might be the time where we kind of see the full ceiling of Zach Evans.
Well, I think the next guy has the perfect running back's name, Tank. Tank Bigsby, 6', 208, out of Auburn. You know, people talked about he didn't have the greatest offensive line this year, but one thing that stuck out with me, he seemed to have good feet and cutback ability.
Mhm.
What were some of the things you that really struck you that could translate to the next level?
First of all, I love Tank Bigsby. He's my RB3. I have him above
Ooh.
our consensus. I think that a lot of the stuff that he got knocked for are things that are going to help him at the next level. His ability to create when the offensive line lets 4 people through, which Auburn's offensive line tended to do that quite a bit. Um, the lateral burst is remarkable. He can pretty much jump cut 3 to 5 yards, and that makes him very difficult to bring down. He's a powerful runner, but he does get upfield very quickly. I think he works well, especially within the tackles, but if he has to kick outside, I did worry about the long speed. I don't think that the long speed is going to be much of a problem. I think when we get to combine time, that 208 number is probably going to bump up a little bit. I think he's going to probably weigh in around 215 and still run in the 4.5s, which would be a really good time for a player his size. But the explosives, the jumping, the side to side stuff, that's going to be there for him. He's a very, very difficult player to bring down, which is it. It's great that his nickname is Tank because it fits. He reminds me of Josh Jacobs. I think that those two players have very similar running styles, and I think that you can look at Tank Bigsby and say, well, he can catch passes too. He can be our 3-down workhorse. Let's go get him on day 2.
Yeah, getting that guy on day 2, I think would be a great move. Man, there's so many teams that I'd love to see him on. I mean, you talked about what the jump cut for that 3-4 yards. I did see that, and it was that you can't teach. You just can't teach. That's what makes these guys different. So you're getting me fired up for this class, man. Even more after seeing that. Again, check out the rookie guide, Familia. One guy that seemed to have jumped up after the Senior Bowl. This guy it seemed to be everybody's just kind of darling after the Senior Bowl. I think the first thing they loved was that he weighed in over 200 pounds, because I think his listed weight at Tulane was 195. Now, in preparing for this, I went back and I rewatched all of his carries from the USC game, the bowl game, the Cotton Bowl, and I just saw a variety of talent. He was not afraid of contact. I mean, he had some good long speed, not great long speed like some of the other, definitely not like Bijan. Not few humans have that, but is he going to be a guy that takes that Senior Bowl hype through the combine and into the draft?
I think so, and I think there are 2 things that happened. I think the USC game happened and everyone said, wow, that's a kid I should probably watch. I'll get to that when the Senior Bowl rolls around. And so then the Senior Bowl rolled around and everyone started to watch Tyjae. I know I got to him very late in the process, because when you look at a group of 5 running back that's under 200 pounds, you're thinking, yeah, probably a day 3 pick, might be a good pass catcher at that size. And that's pretty much all he is. And then you watch his film and you realize pretty quickly that he has more ability than just that. He's got fantastic contact balance for a player his size. How translatable that is, I do wonder, because I think we saw it at a high level, but once again, at 204, I'd love to see him get all the way up to 210 while maintaining the burst and the speed and things like that. But overall, I mean, he's one of the more complete backs. He's a fantastic pass catcher as well. He can get downfield. He's my RB4 right now because of the Zach Evans knocks that I've had. But Tyjae, ultimately, there are some vision concerns in terms of between the tackles work. But if you get him out and running outside stuff, I think you're really comfortable with what he can do in that aspect. And then his feet are just really, really good. He is very concise with his footwork, and I think that allows him to take advantage of even the smaller holes. Tulane had a good offensive line. I think that may have helped him quite a bit, but I think when you're looking at projecting him to the next level, you can say this is a kid that can probably catch 50 passes and take 180-ish carries. Maybe that's a little high, maybe 150, but he can be a high touch, high volume type of player, in my opinion.
What did you think of him in the passing game?
So I think he can catch. I think in terms of pass blocking, I do get concerned about the size. There's a few clips from the Senior Bowl. He's got the want to, he's got the technique. It's just he doesn't have the size. So if you're consistently throwing him out there as a let's take on this defensive tackle, I don't know if he can hold up. He can chip. I think he's a good chip blocker. But I do think that he will work his way onto the field because of what he can do when he's catching passes.
Okay, well, this next guy that we're talking about got a soft spot in my heart because I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Bruins fan, UCLA Bruins. My wife's a Bruin. My daughter was born there. I told that to Kevin when we talked about Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So Zach Charbonnet, who almost came out last year, but he went back in the draft. You're looking at him, he's got that prototypical size, 6'1", 220. Definitely got displayed the power. Could he be in the right spot, a 3-down back?
That's a question that I keep asking myself. I think I think we saw more of what he can do as a pass catcher this year, and I think we saw more wiggle and lateral movement, elusiveness. I think we saw a lot more of that this year. That was a question I had. I thought, this is a guy run straight between the tackles, eat up a lot of carries. I think that's valuable. I think NFL teams value that. I also think that they would prefer to have a guy that can also stay on the field and catch a pass if he has to. And I think we saw enough from Charbonnet. He bumped up like 5 or 6 spots in my rankings this year. And just you can tell he's still getting better. He's still learning the nuances of the position. I think his vision got better. I think that all the power running that he does, he still can bounce outside and beat defenders to the edge, which you don't always see that with 220-pound guys. And Charbonnet is one I am very confident will be like a round 2, early round 3 pick because of that skill set. I forget what our comp actually is in the guide, but I saw someone say he's Bijan Robinson, but a little better. And I think that's a pretty accurate assessment. I could see that. Think he's a lot better than Bijan Robinson. So
I could see that too.
Yeah. So Charbonnet is a guy that I don't know if like the value's ever going to catch up unless his landing spot is insane. A landing spot that I see a lot for him is Miami.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, and that's one I like. I kind of want them to get another speed guy, that like the next guy that we're going to talk about, just because I want to see what that offense looks like. But for for an offense that needs a guy to eat up carries, he would be a perfect fit. And arguably a high RB2 finish as a rookie is what I would probably project in that situation, which is that'd be really, really good for a rookie.
And one thing that I like is I like to see how guys show up against good defenses. And going up against Utah, which was a one of the top defenses in the Pac-12, Oregon also had an excellent defense, even though they got beat up otherwise. The Bruins did, but he showed up in both games. So that to me says a lot for guys at the next level, and that has me feeling good about him. You mentioned the next guy. Is this the most polarizing guy, DEVONE ACHANE? Did I say it right?
Yes, yeah, ACHANE. We've messed that up on the Football Guys College Football Show enough times for everyone to just feel comfortable saying it however they want to. I think Jeff calls him ACHANE. We actually, I think it's ACHANE. We don't actually know, but that sounds right.
In Spanish, we could call it ACHANE. So, but we'll keep ACHANE.
Yeah, I like that better actually. No, yeah, I've when I studied him, I said this is probably the most difficult evaluation I've had to do at the running back position. He's got game-breaking speed, and there's no way around that. He is one of the faster players probably ever to hit the combine. Like, he is going to run an insane 40-yard dash time that's going to kind of break the combine. On the other side of things, the contact balance is not good. His snap-to-snap consistency was not very good. He was productive, and it was mostly on the back of massive breakaway runs. Now, there's value to that. I think that a good NFL offense can take advantage of that speed and get him out in space and make sure that he is not getting, blown up at the line of scrimmage. I think some evaluators have said, for his size, he's got good contact balance. Sure. But that size doesn't really translate to the NFL. We've never really seen a guy his size be productive at the NFL level, or at least run for 1,000 yards. So I think when you're looking at his profile, he needs to be a pass catcher, and I don't think he's the most natural pass catcher yet. And he needs a creative offense. If he gets that, though, this is a guy that could absolutely break fantasy football, because if he gets, 150 touches and scores a touchdown on, 10% of them, which would be a crazy rate, but that's also in his cards because of that speed. So, but yes, polarizing, difficult to evaluate. He's my RB10 right now, so a little lower than where we have him consensus wise, but good player. Just don't know what the projection is just yet.
Yeah, that one, I don't know, because you want to look at him and again call him an Eckler type, or I think the last running back to go listed under 200 pounds to go over 1,000 yards, 1,000 yards rushing, was Philip Lindsay like 5 years ago, and he was only the guy, that guy because the guy got drafted early, just kind of flopped. So I want him. I want ACHANE to be that guy that gets drafted to be that second, that complimentary, that third down back, and maybe they develop him as a little bit more of a pass catcher. One thing that really struck me though was that game against LSU. He had 38 carries in that game, which is just a monster workload. And LSU is an SEC defense, so they got some big boys on there, some guys who were NFL size. But I went for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns, but again, LSU is good, but this is what he's going to be seeing in the NFL is going to be different. And I don't, that size is just such an issue. Size is not so much of an issue with this next guy, Sean Tucker, Syracuse, go Orange. I like the cutback ability on him, and the cutback ability and immediately get back into reaccelerate on that one. Good after the contact. What were some of the things that really struck you? He was another 1,000-yard rusher. Did pretty well in the passing game as well.
Yeah, Tucker's also another difficult evaluation for me, because I think while he's a third-year junior, I believe, he's still a very raw prospect in terms of what he's able to do between the tackles specifically. I think when you get him in space, he's an incredible athlete. He's another guy that's going to break the combine, because I think at his size, he's also going to run 4.3s. He's a track kid. He also runs track at Syracuse. That being said, I think there are times that he leaves a lot of yards on the field, and NFL draft analysts are very low on him. I've seen him anywhere from like 9 to 14, and I really haven't seen him much higher in most NFL draft circles. The fantasy community, on the other hand, does have him quite a bit higher because of that athleticism and because of what he can be. I saw a Jonathan Taylor comp. It wasn't me, though. That's a little that's a little too bold for me. But if he develops and if he gets into an offense that, once again, just creates bigger holes for him between the tackles and then utilizes him on the outside, I think you're going to get a productive kid. It's just, where does the NFL stand on him? Because I think that is the big question mark right now.
Yeah. Did you get a comp on him?
Miles Sanders is the comp.
I can see that.
Which,
I like that.
And I loved, it's interesting because I loved Miles Sanders when he was coming out of Penn State. I'm a little lower. I mean, Tucker's my RB9, so I'm a little lower on him simply because I do think Miles Sanders had a little more nuance to his game. Tucker probably has more upside though. So.
I could see that. Yeah, I mean, Sanders is definitely going to get paid something this year.
By someone.
Someone's going to probably not going to be Philly. Probably not going to be Philly, but no, I don't even think they franchise tag him. Probably not. This next guy, Eric Gray from Oklahoma, another guy who seems to be, rising up a little bit in the lead up to the NFL draft. One thing that really struck me about him, I really liked his feet. Though I felt like he had really agile, great agility on his feet, and which really impressed me with him for a guy, well over 200 pounds. He just had a lightness to it, and that to me always seems to translate well to the NFL game. Obviously in Oklahoma, coming from, a Power 5 conference, he's a guy that could be that could make the jump. He's not the same kind of guy as Ramondre Stevenson. Very different runners. Stevenson was much bigger. But what are some of the things that are striking and good, and maybe things that, because we're now to the point where some guys have a little bit more warts to them?
Sure. I'm a massive fan of Eric Gray. He's up there near Charbonnet in my rankings. The burst and the stuff between the tackles is pretty remarkable. And it's stuff that we knew was there. It's just, it never really came to fruition for him until this last year. But then that new Oklahoma offense this year really highlighted how good he can be when he gets a lot of touches. Good pass catcher. I think what really stands out to me is he can be a reliable guy that can also stand back there and pass block. I think he's a pretty good pass blocker. You're right. The footwork, the decisiveness, like those things are all there with Eric Gray. And if we're talking about a guy that can hit a home run, he's up there. I think he's one of the better athletes, pound for pound, at least in this class. I think there are some people who are a little bit down on his athleticism, and I think he's going to run pretty well. He's also, it looked like he was bulking up for the Senior Bowl. I know there were a lot of discussions about his quads. Shout out to AJ Dillon, I guess, but he was out there and he really stood out to a lot of people in what he was able to do. And the Senior Bowl is not a great place for running backs to showcase what they can do. So I think that stood out as well. But yeah, good footwork. I think if we're talking about what he can improve on, he's not the most patient runner. I think he likes to get the ball and go. I think that for certain offenses that could be beneficial. I also think when he's out in space, there are times that he also leaves yards on the field. I think, he doesn't have the best second and third level vision. And I think that ends up, leaving some of those yards, despite having that breakaway speed and that athleticism. He does leave some of that on the field. So I love him though. Like I said, he's my RB7 right now. So.
No, again, I mean, you really can dream on some of these guys from a dynasty standpoint, and then actually people who are draft nicks and want to see their team go grab a guy like this. The Rams don't have a lot of picks, but you think, you'd love to see someone. I mean, this is me wanting to see someone compliment Cam Akers, or the Chargers finally getting that guy to help Austin Eckler. We're gonna keep going. We're making great time here. Kendre Miller out of TCU. Now, did that the drubbing in the national championship game? We know it. Kevin and I talked about how Max Duggan had hurt him. What did it do to Miller's draft stock?
I I think good NFL evaluators will look at those two teams and kind of say, we understand. We understand that TCU probably shouldn't have been on that field with Georgia. On the other side of things, I think that he showed enough throughout the year to even if they have questions about that game, I think he showed enough to be pretty high on their radar. Um, he's an interesting kid because I don't think he's got any special traits. I don't think anything that he does is special. I also think that everything that he does is very good. I keep saying giving like numbers to my grades. I do have a system where I just say NFL starter, quality NFL starter, all pro, things like that. Bijan's way up there. But we're still, so he's my RB11, and that would still classify as an NFL starter. I think that he's a guy that can handle a large workload. I think that he can be part of a committee. I think that he can run with power. He can run with a little more elusiveness than I even expected when I first watched him. But the main thing that stood out with Kendre Miller the first time I watched him was that it was difficult to tell him and Zach Evans apart. And with how highly I was thinking of Zach Evans, and I still do, I think that matters. While that's a very weird evaluation tactic, if I confuse a player with one of the better running backs in the class, that means that that's also one of the better running backs in the class. So good size, good athleticism. I think some team's probably going to get a steal because I don't think he's going to get drafted as high as maybe people think right now. But
No, I think you're. I mean, yeah. Can you imagine him falling like in the like the fourth or the fifth round and being uh, just to a team that really doesn't have any? But I keep going back to Houston's example last year, where you know Rex Burkhead to beat out Rex Burkhead, a fine player in his day, but yeah, he's on the other side of 30 for running backs. That's AARP top. So
yeah,
and we saw it, and we saw the what a guy could do with the opportunity. So we talking about since we're making good time. I wanted to ask you about a player before we get into kind of sleepers, kind of kicking off the sleepers. And he was the talk of this, one of the talks of the Senior Bowl, Roschon Johnson. He got obviously got injured, broke his hand, but he showed so much. You've got the size combo, 6'2", 223 pounds, coming out of Texas. Obviously, he played behind Bijan Robinson. Seeing them side to side, you saw some difference, but in the right opportunity, could Johnson become a guy that just runs way past what he did, where it was only a little more than 500 yards at Texas last year?
yeah, and so Roschon's pretty far down in my rankings simply because I incorporate a production grade, and that obviously hurts him, and it's tough to weigh. I have to weigh everything kind of equally in that respect. But from a film standpoint, I think there are a lot of really good things about his game. I guess I'll hit the main knock for me is I think that he tends to kick runs outside when he doesn't need to. I think that he prefers to get outside and use that burst and use that athleticism and use that contact balance when someone does get to him. On the other side of things, those things are definitely pluses. And Roschon is a unique player because he does have a full toolbox. When we talk about defensive end prospects, we talk about their toolbox and how they can beat an offensive tackle. Roschon's kind of one of those guys as well, where he can go out there and he can bully someone as a pass blocker. Then he can go bust off a 15-yard run. Maybe that didn't land. He goes back on special teams and makes a play on special teams. He also was a quarterback recruit. So like he's a utility type of player. We talk about baseball. He's one of the utility infielders where he can play anywhere. And I think that is definitely going to extend his career. He's going to stick with teams. I don't know that he's ever going to really lead a backfield though. I think he's more of a committee back, a guy that we've seen what his role can be behind Bijan. And I think that that's actually a really good role for him, like a change of pace type of guy that can punch the ball in the end zone for you, can go catch some passes, but do all of those fun things that he's going to be a lot of teams' favorite player. Just positional value aside, I think he's probably going to be drafted second, third round, just for all of those different skills that he has.
You talk about the blocking, and that always seems to be the thing that gets the beat writers excited, because the coaches start talking up the blocking ability, and then that seems to give a guy a little bit extra lift. I think that could add some air to the helium to ROSCHON's draft capital. So when it comes to ADP, when it comes to fantasy time, so. We've talked about a lot of guys, but there's so many guys. I think you evaluated 31 guys for the draft guide.
Mm-hmm.
Any sleepers that you could be seeing that are going in later rounds? Pacheco being a 7th rounder, Algier being a 5th rounder. Anybody you could see going later out of the remaining group that people should be keeping an eye on?
Yeah. So the first one, Kenny McIntosh, Georgia's lead back from this last year. McIntosh is a weird study because I don't think that he is particularly good between the tackles, despite running within that Georgia offense where they do run a lot of stuff between the tackles. But I think his work in like gap scheme blocking stuff is the stuff that you probably want him to stay away from. Zone blocking scheme stuff, I think he's really good. The athleticism is all there for Kenny McIntosh. He can line up once again, kind of like Bijan. He can line up at wide receiver. He did that, I think, in the college football playoff against Michigan and took one to the house. He lined up out in a trips formation to the left and just took one to the house because he's got that long speed. He's got that contact balance and athleticism. And so Kenny McIntosh is a guy that's still very high in my rankings for what he is. I think he's one of the bigger, pass catching backs in the class. And I think that that's going to be valuable. And, combine's coming up. He's going to test well. All the Georgia kids test well, but I think that he is a very good athlete that is going to end up probably he's a guy that I think is like fringe 3rd, 4th round. And I think if he goes in the 4th round, I have a little less interest in him for fantasy, depending on the landing spot, because I do think he can be an NFL starter and kind of even lead a backfield as well.
No, gosh, I could think of so many places you'd love to see him go. I mean, what's Arizona gonna do if James Conner doesn't come back? And they've got some picks to go. So I mean, yeah, these next 2 months are going to be so fascinating when it comes to the running back. Just as a position for fantasy, with where so many free agents they're going to land, all these rookies, what's going to happen now? Could we get? I've got a redraft question when it comes to Bijan. By the time we're getting close to Labor Day next year, is Bijan going to be a 1st rounder? At the very least a late 1st rounder. I've been predicting that.
Yeah, it's strange. Because I think people have kind of overcorrected. We were really high on running backs 4 years ago, and a lot of running backs were going in the 1st round. And now when you're going through drafts and mock drafts right now, people are scared because of what has happened at the top of fantasy drafts in the last few years. Jonathan Taylor especially comes to mind just this past year. Bijan, though, is definitely one that I think is going to stick in the 1st round for a long time. Injury aside, hopefully we don't have to deal with any of that with Bijan. But yeah, I think he's probably the only one. I think in 2 Labor Days, I think maybe we're talking about 4 or 5 of these guys that would come close to that at least.
No, it's gonna there's going to be a lot of heat for him by that point. On the dynasty standpoint, there's going to be probably as many as 4 quarterbacks going in the 1st round for dynasty. Do you see how many running backs could you see going in that 1st round?
5. 5's probably aggressive. I could see it. We just recently did a mock draft over on the Football Guys channel. I think 4 ended up going in the 1st round and 5 in the first 13 picks. It was a 12-teamer, and then we kind of rotated through. But this is the year to go heavy at running back. Once again, this is the reset, I think. This plus the free agent class. Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs are going to kind of dictate what that looks like, because right now Josh Jacobs is one of the better dynasty values, but all of these guys have a shot to be impactful early. And so I think this is when you say, okay, this is my time to get a young running back that I can rely on for the next, 3 to 5 years at the very least, and kind of hope that they all hit. We know that not all of these guys are going to hit. That's just part of playing fantasy football and dynasty. But a lot of these guys have a really good shot just in terms of what we've looked at in the last few classes even.
Love it. Love it. Mi amigo, round and third headed for home on this one, though. The rookie guide, coolest part of doing that. And by the way, Familia, also make sure you're catching that college football, the Football Guys College Football Show. Bookmark it, follow it on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get it. Get that thing once a week downloaded to you, because these guys, this is their money time. This is where they're going to win you some leagues and get you ready for your drafts. So best part, though, of that rookie guide.
Man, well, first of all, thank you. Also for folks that want to download the rookie guide, it is still free. So if you go to footballguys.com/rookie guide, it'll take you to our landing page. You can just click the download. It'll have you put in your email, and then you can download it there. It is, one of the best free resources out there. The coolest part, honestly, I'd be remiss to not talk about just working with Kevin and Jeff on this thing. The collaboration with those two, and I love those guys. I know listeners have already seen them. I'm the third one here, but they are just incredibly awesome to work with. We all worked very hard on it. My favorite part was probably designing the thing. So I got to kind of create the look of it, and I take a lot of pride in that. And so that was a really cool part, because I was playing with a ton of different ways to make it look visually appealing while still getting good information out. Those guys killed it on all the scouting reports, and we all, chipped in. And shout out to Joe Bryant for giving us the opportunity to do it. But it was a very good time. And we've got more coming. We've got all the combine info. We've got a very big 3.0 update that won't come out until probably post-draft, but we're excited about that one too. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that I think get in now when it's free, and just make sure that you check that out, because it's a lot of content. It'll probably take you until the draft to consume it all, but that's the goal, to get you guys ready for your dynasty leagues, and for even a lot of these guys will have some impact in redraft. So I think it's a good tool for everyone.
Love it. Love it. Let's close it up. Because you mentioned the baseball, third number 3 batter. That's always a good one in the lineup. But Mexican food, what I always close it out. Favorite Mexican food, favorite tacos in your neck of the woods. What are some of your favorite dishes?
So I'm a big burrito guy. And so here's the thing. I lived in North Carolina for a year, and we had a Mexican restaurant, an authentic Mexican restaurant, very close to us. And so I'm in Columbus, Ohio now, and I've yet to find anything that rivals that. I'm a big, shrimp burrito type of guy, or a burrito with all of the meats, the steak, the chicken, and the shrimp, just tossed all in there. We have a few, they're chain restaurants. We haven't really found one that we love. There was one, I forget the name of it, that me and my fiance did like. She liked it a little more than me. Went out of business during COVID, and so we're still trying to find the best one around here. There's a Don Tequila, I think that's a chain, an Ohio chain at the very least. But I enjoy, man, we have Mexican probably 2 times a week at least. So yeah, it's good. We're still trying to locate the best one though. I want the best. So.
Well, Familia, yeah. If anybody's thinking about opening up a restaurant, hey, Columbus, Ohio, hook it up. Right there in Buckeye country. Get it. Yeah, you're gonna have those college students, that whole college town just flooding in the place. So Familia, get it going. Get some good tacos out there. So Christian, thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing this. Anything else you want to plug?
No, just like you said, go check out the Football Guys College Football Show. Right now, it's not really a college football show because we are just hammering away at this rookie class to get you guys prepared for Dynasty Leagues. But we do go live every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Football Guys Show. We're also on every podcast form that you would listen to, your favorite podcast app, we are there. So Football Guys College Football Show, shout out to Kevin and Jeff because they kill it. Jeff, he puts together all of our show sheet to make sure that we're on track, and he's boss man. Jeff is the boss. But and thank you for having me. This has been a blast. I love talking about this rookie class, and I hope people were able to get some knowledge from it. So
oh, this was awesome. What a great series. And actually, I'm going to be able to clip some of these little pieces out that I'm going to be dropping them here all the way up to draft time, because really these scouting reports are going to be tried and true all the way through. So Christian, muchas gracias for joining us, and Familia, thank you for joining us on this somewhat live series. Again, go to fantasypoints.com, get your 2023 subscription, get yourself taken care of all the way through the Super Bowl. Get taken care of. Also, thank you to Anchor for putting us on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Find me at Jorge Martin 17 on Twitter, and again, FamiliaFFB.com for all the written content. Otra vez to our invitado, muchas gracias. And to you, familia, thank you for joining us. Always remember, todos somos familia. Salud.